You wouldn't believe how fast a family can fall apart. How quickly everything you thought was strong can be ripped to pieces. It all started so quietly, so harmless like any other evening, but by the time the sun came up the next morning, Papoose was lying in a hospital bed, and people all over the internet were whispering about how it got that bad. You might think you know Papoose and Remy Ma, hip-hop's ride-or-die couple who had survived everything from prison sentences to industry betrayal. But behind those glossy pictures and those awards show smiles, something darker was growing, something nobody wanted to admit until it finally exploded. Some people say you could see it in the way Remy's son would look at Papoose, that hard stare like he'd been waiting for a chance to prove something. Others swear it was just a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. But either way, the damage is done and there's no going back. On that night, people who were there say you could feel the tension before anyone even opened their mouth. It was supposed to be a family dinner, just a little gathering to celebrate a new business deal and maybe smooth over some of the small arguments that had been brewing. You know how families are. Someone says one thing, someone takes it the wrong way, and soon enough you have a room full of hurt feelings. But this was different. This was something that had been building over months, maybe years. People close to them said Remy's son had always struggled to see Papoose as more than just the man who married his mother. No matter how hard Papoose tried to be patient and supportive, there was a wall between them that never really came down. That night, that invisible wall finally cracked. They say the argument started over something so simple, it almost sounds silly now. Somebody brought up money, some deal that hadn't worked out the way they'd hoped, and Papoose made a comment about responsibility. Maybe he meant it as advice or maybe it was a criticism, but in that moment, it hit the wrong nerve. Remy's son shot back that Papoose needed to mind his business. The words hung in the air like a dare. Everyone at that table felt it, that hush before the storm. Remy tried to step in, her voice trembling, telling them both to calm down, that it wasn't worth fighting over. But Papoose wasn't about to back down. He had spent too many years holding everything together to be spoken to like that in his own house. And Remy's son, he wasn't a little boy anymore. He was grown and he was tired of feeling like he was being judged. Some people say it was the look on Papoose's face that set everything off. It wasn't anger so much as disappointment, and sometimes that's worse. That look that says you're not measuring up, you're not enough. Remy's son stood up, knocking his chair over, and in that second, everyone knew something bad was about to happen. There was shouting, voices overlapping, accusations flying. Someone tried to grab Remy's son's arm to pull him back, but he shook them off. And then it happened. A hand came up, a fist closed, and Papoose staggered back like he'd been punched by all the resentment in that room. No one moved for a moment because it didn't feel real. How could it be real? This was Papoose, the man who held Remy down when she was locked up, who raised her son like his own. And now he was leaning against the wall, holding his jaw, with a stunned look in his eyes. Someone called 911 while Remy was screaming, her voice breaking into these ragged sobs that no one had ever heard from her before. She was torn between rushing to Papoose and trying to calm her son, who was pacing around, still shouting. Neighbors later said they heard glass breaking, and maybe that was when Papoose collapsed. Maybe it was from the punch, or maybe it was the shock, the heartbreak that knocked him off his feet. When the paramedics came, they had to push through a crowd of people who had gathered outside, phones out, recording everything. You can hear it in the videos that leaked later. Remy screaming, the sirens, someone crying in the background. The whole scene looked like something out of a nightmare. At the hospital, the doctors checked him for a concussion, and it turned out he had a fractured cheekbone. They said he was lucky it wasn't worse, but anyone who saw him lying there, bruised and hooked up to monitors, would have disagreed. Because it wasn't just his body that was broken, it was something deeper. You could see it in his eyes, this hollow look, like a man who had finally realized the cost of all those years trying to hold a family together that maybe didn't really want to be held. Meanwhile, Remy was pacing the hallway, her makeup smeared, her phone blowing up with messages. Some were supportive, others vicious, accusing her of failing as a mother, as a wife, as a human being. People she thought were friends were gossiping behind her back, leaking details to blogs. She tried to call her son, but he wouldn't pick up. She tried to call Papoose's family, and they weren't sure they wanted to talk to her either. It was like the entire world had turned against her in the span of a few hours. When news broke online, it spread faster than anyone could control. Headlines screaming about domestic violence, betrayal, the end of hip-hop's favorite love story. Fans were fighting in the comments, taking sides, digging up every old rumor they could find. Some said Papoose had always been too controlling. Others said Remy's son was a spoiled grown man with no respect. No one really knew the truth, but that didn't stop them from acting like they did. While Papoose was recovering, he refused to speak to the press. But a close friend told reporters that he felt humiliated, that he didn't know how to look Remy in the eye again. He had stood by her through scandals and prison and beefs, and this was the thanks he got. Some sources said he was considering pressing charges, not because he wanted revenge, but because he couldn't just pretend it hadn't happened. He kept replaying it in his mind, that moment when the punch landed, wondering if there was anything he could have done to stop it. Remy, for her part, was caught in a storm of guilt and rage. She wanted to protect her son, but she also couldn't deny the damage he had done. Late that night, she posted a single message on Instagram. "Pray for my family." No explanation, no excuses. Just that. And it only fueled the speculation. Everyone wanted to know what was happening behind the scenes. Was Papoose going to leave her? Was she going to cut her son off? Nobody knew, and for once, Remy had no idea either. People close to the situation said that in the days that followed, Papoose moved out of the house. Not because he didn't love Remy, but because he needed space to figure out what came next. He was tired of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. Tired of carrying all the weight. Remy tried to visit him, but he wouldn't open the door. He told her through the intercom that he needed time, that he still loved her, but he couldn't look at her without seeing that night over and over. And all the while, the internet was eating the story up. Every tiny update turned into another viral post. Pictures of Papoose leaving the hospital, Remy crying in her car, old videos of happier times resurfacing with bitter captions about how nothing lasts forever. Some fans begged them to work it out. Others said this was proof that no relationship is safe from destruction. There were also those who blamed Remy entirely, saying she had created an environment where her son felt entitled to lash out. Others argued that Papoose must have done something to provoke the attack. But the truth is, sometimes things just break. Sometimes love and resentment live side by side until one day, the resentment finally wins. A week later, Papoose finally spoke in a short statement. He said he was healing physically, but emotionally he was still processing everything. He asked for privacy. He didn't mention Remy's son by name, didn't threaten legal action, didn't try to spin the story. He just sounded tired, like a man who had been holding in too much for too long. Remy was seen visiting her son in a small apartment across town. They talked for hours, and when she left, she looked older, drained. Reporters tried to ask her if she was standing by him, if she blamed him, but she just shook her head and got into her car. People who know her say she's never been this lost, that for all her strength, this broke something inside her. The question on everyone's lips, the one whispered in group chats, debated on podcasts, and dissected in comment sections, is simple but heavy. Can this family ever come back from this? Can Papoose truly forgive what happened? Can Remy somehow piece together the shattered bond between the man she loves and the son she raised like her own? No one has the answer. Not yet. Because betrayal on this level, it's not something you just get over. Stains everything. It rewrites the history you thought was solid. You start to question the realness of moments you once held sacred. And no matter how many times you try to replay it differently in your mind, the ending never changes. Insiders close to the situation say Papoose has been quietly talking to lawyers, reviewing, reflecting, and maybe preparing. Divorce, custody, distance. It's all on the table. But then again, there are whispers that he's still hoping. That some part of him wants to salvage what's left. That he's still clinging to the version of Remy he once believed would never hurt him like this. And maybe both are true. Because love isn't black and white, it's chaos. It's contradiction. You can feel betrayed to your core and still ache to hear that person's voice. You can want to walk away and still look back. That's what makes this story so real, so raw, and so damn painful. It's not just a celebrity scandal, it's a mirror. And if you've ever loved hard and been let down harder, you know exactly what this feels like. So here we are, watching from the outside as a once solid family starts to crack right in front of us. It's easy to point fingers, easy to say what we would do. But the truth is, most of us don't really know. Not until it's our home filled with silence, our trust on the line. What happens next? No one knows. Maybe there's a miracle. Maybe there's a clean break. Or maybe the real healing hasn't even started yet. If you've made it this far, thank you. I know this wasn't an easy story to sit through, but then again, truth rarely is. Let me know in the comments. Should Papoose forgive and move forward, or has this gone too far? And don't forget to subscribe if you want more real, raw stories that go beyond the surface. Until next time, protect your peace and the people who protect you, because life can change with just one decision.